Welcome to the Dermatology Studio with Dr. Yusra Ayaz.
Today, we're diving deep into a really interesting and pretty rare skin condition called Pityriasis Rubra Pilaris, or PRP for short. Now, this one can be a real puzzle for both doctors and patients, so we're going to break it all down and figure out what makes it so unique.
You know, the name itself is actually a huge clue. Pityriasis, that just means a fine, kind of brand-like scaling on the skin. Rubra, that's Latin for red, simple enough. And pilaris tells us that it's all happening around the hair follicles. So right there in the name, you get the picture. A red, scaly condition centered on the hair follicles.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the basics of what PRP is, then we'll dig into the biology, what to look for, and the 6 different types. And we'll wrap it all up with how it's diagnosed and, most importantly, how it's treated.
All right, let's jump right into our first section. We're going to look at who gets PRP, how common it really is, and some of the other conditions that like to show up alongside it.
You know, one of the strangest things about PRP is when it decides to show up. It has what's called a bimodal distribution, which is just a fancy way of saying it has 2 peak times. It can appear really early, in the first 10 years of life, or it can wait and pop up much, much later, between the ages of 40 and 60. And it really doesn't care about gender or race. It affects everyone pretty equally.
So just how rare are we talking? Well, estimates put it at about 1 in every 3,500 people. And that rarity is a big reason why it can be so tough to get a diagnosis. It's not something most people, or even most doctors, see every day.
Now, this is really important. PRP doesn't always fly solo. It can be linked to other health issues like autoimmune diseases, infections, and even certain cancers. In fact, about 20% of people with PRP also have hypothyroidism. And for one specific type, type 6, the skin condition can actually be the very first sign of an HIV infection. Okay, so we've got a sense of what PRP is. Let's peel back the layers and go a little deeper. We're going to get into the biology to really understand what's going on under the skin. So the truth is, we still don't know the exact cause. But researchers have zeroed in on a critical inflammatory pathway called the IL-23/Th17 axis. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the same one involved in psoriasis. Basically, this pathway goes into overdrive, releasing a flood of inflammatory messengers. And that's why a drug called ustekinumab, which specifically targets this pathway, has been a real game changer for some patients.
Now, this is a super important point. What's the big difference between PRP and psoriasis? Well, in psoriasis, the inflammation is mostly driven by your immune cells, specifically T cells. But in PRP, it's your actual skin cells, the keratinocytes, that are sounding the alarm and driving the inflammation. It might sound like a small detail, but believe me, it makes a huge difference when you're talking about treatment.
While most cases of PRP seem to happen randomly, some are definitely hereditary. These familial cases are linked to what's called a gain-of-function mutation in a gene called CARD14. Think of it like this. There's a master switch for inflammation in your body called NFKB. This mutation basically flips that switch to on and breaks it, so it's just stuck there, causing all this chronic inflammation.
So you might have the genetic predisposition, but there are also external factors that can kick things off. Sun exposure is a big one. Any kind of trauma or injury to the skin can also trigger it. That's a phenomenon called cobnetorization, where a new patch pops up right where you got hurt. And of course, certain drugs and infections can also start a flare-up.
Okay, we've talked about the why. Now let's get to the what. What does PRP actually look like on the skin? And what does a pathologist see when they look at a piece of it under a microscope?
From a clinical standpoint, PRP has some really classic tells. It often starts with these little rough bumps around the hair follicles. Over time, these bumps start to merge together, forming these large, very distinct salmon-colored plaques. But here's the dead giveaway for doctors, something called islands of sparing. These are small patches of perfectly normal, healthy skin sitting right in the middle of an affected area. On top of that, many people get this thick, waxy, yellowish-orange skin on their palms and soles. And as if that's not enough, it can be incredibly itchy or painful, and can even affect your ability to sweat.
So let's put on our lab coats for a second. When a pathologist looks at a biopsy slide of PRP, they see a very specific picture. There's this alternating pattern in the skin layers that they call a checkerboard pattern. They'll see keratin clogging up the hair follicles, and they'll notice a thickening of the skin's granular layer. There's also this irregular thickening of the top layer of skin that kind of looks like psoriasis, but it's different. Looking even closer, there might be some separation between the skin cells, and you'll see a few inflammatory cells hanging out near the blood vessels. But what's just as important is what you don't see. There are no neutrophils. The absence of these particular immune cells is a massive clue for a pathologist that helps them distinguish PRP from other look-alike conditions. And interestingly, in the most severe widespread cases, the top layer of skin can actually get thinner.
All right, just when you thought you had a handle on it, it gets a little more complex. See, PRP isn't just one single thing. It's actually a family of 6 different subtypes, and they're all classified based on when they start, what they look like, and how they behave over time.
This table does a great job of laying it all out. As you can see, type I, the classic adult type, is by far the most common, making up over half of all cases. It tends to spread from head to toe, but the good news is it has the best outlook. Then you've got the juvenile forms. Type 3 is similar to the adult kind and usually clears up pretty fast. Type 4 is more localized to the elbows and knees. Then you have the rarer ones, like Type 2, a chronic adult form, and Type 5, a chronic form that starts at birth and runs in families. And finally, there's Type 6, the one associated with HIV.
So with all these different types, and the fact that it can look like a bunch of other skin conditions, how on earth do doctors actually diagnose it? And what are the potential risks if it's left unchecked?
Honestly, the diagnosis is mostly clinical. It's based on what the doctor sees, all those signs we just talked about. But it's really a process of elimination. A doctor has to rule out a whole list of other conditions that can look incredibly similar. Depending on the type, PRP can be mistaken for anything from psoriasis and eczema to even a type of skin cancer when it causes that total body redness, which we call erythroderma. And we have to talk about the serious side of this. When PRP becomes erythrodermic, meaning it covers almost the entire body, it can become a true medical emergency. All that widespread inflammation puts a huge strain on the heart, it can throw your electrolytes out of whack, and it can make it impossible for your body to regulate its temperature. And if it affects the face for a long time, it can lead to some really serious eye problems, like the eyelid turning outward, a condition called ectropion.
Okay, so we've gone through what PRP is, what might cause it, and how it's diagnosed. Now for the big question. What can we do about it? Let's walk through the different treatment options, from creams all the way to the latest biologic drugs.
The game plan for treatment is usually a step-by-step approach. You start with topical treatments, things like heavy-duty moisturizers, steroid creams, and retinoids to help with the symptoms. If that's not enough to control it, the next step up is usually an oral retinoid pill. For really stubborn cases, doctors will move to second-line options like methotrexate or those biologics we talked about. And for the absolute toughest cases, there are even more powerful drugs. Of course, for type 6, the #1 priority is treating the underlying HIV infection.
But choosing a treatment isn't so simple. There's a lot to consider. Patients with that widespread erythroderma need intense hospital care. Oral retinoids come with serious risks. They can cause birth defects and affect bone development in children. And combining treatments can increase the risk of side effects, like liver damage. But on a really hopeful note, those newer biologic drugs like ustekinumab are showing incredible promise, especially for people who have that specific CARD14 gene mutation. And that really brings us to our final thought, and it's a pretty exciting one. We're just beginning to understand the specific genetic drivers behind some of these PRP types. So as we learn more, you have to wonder, could we be heading toward a future of truly personalized medicine, where we can tailor treatments directly to a person's unique genetic code? For a condition this challenging, that is a very hopeful thought.
Thanks for watching. Hit like, share, and subscribe to the Dermatology Studio. Ask your skin queries in the comments below.